Hey everybody, welcome back to the Average Dude YouTube channel. So I've been seeing a lot of comments on Facebook and the posts about the rear sway bar on the UForce 1000 and the 1000 XL. So what we're going to do today is I'm actually going to remove my rear sway bar and we're going to take measurements, as you can see here, on how much articulation we get from the front of the UForce 1000 XL. Obviously a little bit longer wheelbase, so it's going to flex a little bit better than the normal 1000 would, but you know, either way, we're going to be able to get a good indication on how much of a difference we get. Now, if you're not familiar with what a sway bar does, it basically just takes the sway or body roll out of your chassis. So the whole point of it is to try to keep your body as flat to the ground as possible when you're going through a corner, basically trying to keep it as parallel as it can with the ground. So it's really great for on-road. You know, you're doing 50, 60 miles an hour, something like that, and you're going around some corners. You want to make sure that you're keeping it as flat as possible. Now, on Facebook, I have read a couple posts that people didn't really see any negative from removing it when they're driving on the street. So again, what I'm going to do today is we're going to see how much more articulation we get out of the vehicle after removing it. And also I'm going to go ahead and take it on a little drive just to see how it feels, if it's got too much sway or whatever. So first things first, what we're going to do, like I said, is we're just going to go ahead and measure it. So what I did here, obviously, have my jack set up, and I just have this piece of wood on here, and I'm going to measure from the ground to the top of this piece of wood. What I did is I wrote here on the piece of wood with sway bar, basically, just so SB sway bar, NSB no sway bar, and I'll go ahead and record the measurements on there. There are ramps and stuff like that. I mean, you could drive it up on a ramp and get your measurement that way. The way we're going to do this is, here you can see the wheels jacked up, and the passenger side wheel here barely touches the ground. So that's going to be our indication, right? So this would be the first tire to come up if you don't have enough articulation in the front. Now, I know there's a question there too on, well, if we're removing the sway bar from the back, why are we measuring this up in the front? Well, because either way, we're going to get articulation regardless. So if we remove this from the back, and you can see even jacked up, I mean, it's definitely, there's more of a gap on this side here in the suspension than there is over on the passenger side. But the sway bar tries to keep the body as parallel as possible to the ground when you're going through a corner. So it's really great when you're driving on road. However, when you're trying to articulate on the trails, there's you know, it's not going to allow the passenger side and the driver's side to work completely independent from each other, even though we do have independent rear suspension on this vehicle. So what I'm going to be doing, like I said, is removing this rear sway bar right here. It's these two bolts on this side, two bolts on this side, and then disconnecting the end links here from the bottom on the control arm. It is going to be a little bit of a pain to get these off because there's no Allen hole here on the sway bar end link. So we're going to have to put a pair of pliers back here on the back side of that stud. There's a very good possibility that we could destroy these end links while we're doing this, because I could rip the boot up, or even the ball joint that's inside of here that's locked into the nylon could melt and come apart. The grease could, you know, start pouring out of this thing because it gets too hot, whatever the case is. So I'm going to try to be as careful as possible with these. However, if I don't like the way it rides with the sway bar disconnected, I'm going to order the fully adjustable sway bar end links. I'll put the link in the description below for the company that has those. They're fully adjustable and they're quick disconnect, so they actually have a pin in them instead of being bolted in. So I'll put the link to that in the description below. But like I said, we're going to go ahead and remove it. We'll take it for a ride and, you know, see what we come up with. So again, with the driver's side tire up like this, we are 9 3/4 inches from the ground to the top of this piece of wood right over here by the wheel of the jack. So it's pretty centered to where the wheel hub is. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and lower this down, and I'll get started on removing that rear sway bar. All right, so first thing we're going to do is either remove or lower this plastic shield a little bit, just so that we can get our socket in there. So it's 10mm bolts There's one on either side here, so one all the way up here, and one over here. So a rock in there, of course. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and remove it all the way. So that's that. Like I said, there's just the 2 bolts in there that hold this in place. And now we have full access to get to our sway bar end link here. All right, so this is a very sloppy 15 mil. I tried a 14 on there and it doesn't fit. 14 millimeter is the same as a 9/16. 9/16 is a little bit smaller, doesn't fit. So we're gonna go ahead and use the 15 mil. I'm gonna back you up a little bit here so I can get in there. I'm gonna use my Milwaukee Impact here and a pair of Nipex. So remember, when you're using your pliers, pliers do grab better one direction than they do in another. So try to use that one direction, and that way you're not stripping this out too bad. Beautiful. All right. So you can see here, I still have the front sitting on the jack, and there's enough tension on here to where this sway bar end link isn't completely loose inside of this control arm, right? So there's a little bit of tension still on the whole chassis of the vehicle that's not letting this just slide right out. So we're gonna go ahead and take the other one out, and then we'll take the bolts out from the brackets here, and that should allow us to just go ahead and pull this thing out without having any other issues. If I have to, I'll go ahead and I'll get a pry bar and just start shifting stuff around so I can get it out, but shouldn't be a problem. So what I did on this side, because I couldn't get my pliers in here, is I was able to actually break it loose with just the impact, and then I could grab it on here. I really thought, oh, they are lock nuts. You can kind of see that lip. You can kind of see the lip in there on the nut. They are lock nuts, but they didn't do a very good job locking it on there. So this one here is loose, which is great. See if we can go ahead and get it all the way out. Nope. So we're gonna have to take these off anyways, just so that we can swing that out of there. But you can see now that one's loose. This one here is at least moving around a little bit. So go ahead and take these off of this bracket here. These are a 13 mil. So that one actually fits pretty good. And we're going to want to make sure we take this whole bracket and everything off. All right, that bushing just fell. Half the bushing here just fell off. That little slot right there, when you are putting grease in these fittings, that little slot right there is where the grease goes, and it helps to disperse it throughout this entire bushing, keep the squeaking and the noise down. sway bar is out. So I'll go ahead and put these little shields back on here, and then we'll go ahead and we'll crank the front back up and see how much articulation we get. All right, so now that the rear sway bar is disconnected, I can go ahead and I can remeasure up here, and it looks like we are right at 10 and 15/16. So gained a little over an inch. All right, so it looks like we gained about 1 inch and 3/16 on removing the rear sway bar. Now these vehicles don't really have a lot of suspension travel as it is, so I wasn't expecting like a 3-inch difference or anything like that, but every little bit counts, especially out on the trails. With these having a limited slip rear differential and not having a locker, being able to articulate a little bit more and have that flex in the back, especially in the back where that sway bar was, could help out tremendously in some of the trails. Now, I personally, I've been out on the trails. I've been in extremely muddy trails, and I've been in extremely rocky trails. Rocks weren't too big, probably, I don't know, maybe 10 to 12 inches was like the highest I've had to articulate over. But I've never had an issue. I've never felt it slip. I do air down. In the rear, I run 10 PSI, and in the front, I run 11 to 12 PSI on these Stag tires, even though they obviously call for a lot higher pressure than that, especially with what CF Moto recommends from the factory. So I am airing down. It does help out tremendously. The rocky trails that I go on, I can make, I'd say 95% of it in 2-wheel drive. It's only when I get in like really steep, loose conditions, I actually have to put it into 4-wheel drive. So it's a good side-by-side regardless, but I'm sure, like I said, removing that rear sway bar is going to help out a lot. But I'm going to go ahead and get this off the jack, and we'll go for a quick ride and see how it feels. All right, so let's see how it feels just going through my yard here. Coming up onto the asphalt. Definitely didn't throw me around as much, so I can feel that it's definitely not as stiff back there. And I go ahead and put it in high gear so it's not as loud now that I'm on the asphalt too. So I ride around in normal. I'm not a big fan of how touchy the throttle is in work mode. I know a lot of people talk about that too with the jerkiness and all that kind of stuff. Especially on the trails when it's like really rocky out there, I don't put it in work mode unless I really need the speed and the throttle response. I found that normal mode works fine. I don't have any issues with it whatsoever, and it's plenty of power, even though it is a little bit less power than what we get out of work mode. So definitely has more sway to it, for sure. I don't know if you can see back there, me just like rocking back and forth, but definitely has more sway to it. But it doesn't feel unstable, right? I've had some Jeeps and I've taken the sway bars off of them just to go out in the trail, but even just driving down the road with the sway bar removed on a Jeep, definitely feel that I wouldn't want to drive at high speeds with the sway bars removed on a Jeep at all. So but this, it honestly doesn't feel too bad. I'll probably leave it like this for a little while, maybe go on some longer rides, see how it feels. But like I said, I'm doing 30 miles an hour right now. I don't feel like it's unsafe the way it's set up. So yeah, I'm just gonna cruise it like this and see how it is and go from there. I'm pretty excited to get it out on the trails though. I want to see how it does. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video off. So please like, share, and subscribe. Comment